$55, sir.
A super heavy icebreaker runs about 700 million a copy, and that's not for the Great Lakes, that's for the Arctic. Just keep in mind the relative costs and the benefits associated with icebreakers. Thank you for mentioning it. This committee's been super on that issue. We've talked about the double taxation here, which seems to be maybe not the only issue, but a significant issue. We need to get down to the numbers on the potential revenue that is lost currently and the economic activity that could be gained were there no double taxation. So if you gentlemen could help us with that analysis, it would be very useful. My sense of it is that there's not much tax loss now should we eliminate the double taxation. But we're going to have to score that, and if there's a tax bill ever, then we'd want to have this in it. So we'd want to have that kind of detailed information if you could develop that. Also, there's another way of going about it, and you mentioned Cleveland, and that Cleveland essentially rebated that tax. Once again, numbers would be useful here. We have the annual appropriation of $7 million, $10 million, whatever, for the Marine Highway System. And just thinking of different ways we can get this job done. On the tax side, you can rebate. We could appropriate the money and then it gets rebated, or we can eliminate the tax. So once again, numbers would be very useful for that. Also, the efficiency of loading and unloading, which is said to be a problem. Appreciate your testimony on the efficiency that you've achieved in Maine. But this may be an infrastructure problem on the ports and the docks themselves. So I'd like to get some detail on that. What are we talking about? There's one example in the written testimony here of a method that did that. So if you could just discuss those things, if you have the numbers, if you have what it takes to make the dock efficient for this purpose. Whichever one of you wants to jump in.
Maybe I could touch on the infrastructure end of it. We've invested about $64 million into our relatively small terminal. Much of that revolves around being more efficient. For instance, our maintenance facility was on the pier when we started. The wrecking balls are coming today. We built a new maintenance facility out of the way. And the entire notion is to create that ship-to-shore space that just makes it more efficient to unload a vessel. Similarly, we've expanded our pier space and put new equipment on there, and it pays off. The ROI on this, is a matter of years when the infrastructure lasts an awful long time. Our oldest crane is over 20 years old, and she's still working great. We think it's worth the investment.
Is there a specialty issue here also, the kind of equipment that you need to take from, perhaps not in Maine, but any of the major docks and ports, East Coast, West Coast, coming off a big ship, putting it on a small vessel or a tug, or a barge? We're talking about different kinds of infrastructure that would be needed.
I think the equipment we have at the International Marine Terminal in Portland is the same type of equipment you would use for barge operations, mobile harbor cranes, reach stackers, those types of items.
Very good. One of the things we did a couple of years ago was to allow the Harbor Maintenance Fund to be used for on-the-dock improvements, which has really not been used very much. My final point would be a question for us to try to get into, and that is, and I did not ask this of Admiral Busby, what are the specific projects that are lined up? What we have now created is what I call administrative earmarks. I want to know what his earmarks are. So if we can dig that out and see how they fit into the testimony and the priorities that you've mentioned. With that, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate